So today what we're going to go over is we're going to determine the equity in a property and then do deal structurings on properties with or without equity so that when you look at a property, you'll know exactly what your options are. Then we'll also be looking at creating multiple offers. We'll have equations for that. And then understanding the multiple exit strategies too, because in real estate investing, if you just go in with one and you get burned, not a good idea. So think of multiple ways that you can get paid on this. And then, again, we'll go through the equations to determine the different paydays. And hopefully if we have time, we'll go over kind of the paperwork. But we have lots of equations to go through, so I hope everybody brought their calculators.
You may not have calculators. You have cell phone.
No.
Calculator and cell phone are together.
Oh, okay.
So things we will not go over. We won't go over determining market value. We should have that number already, as well as the rehab costs. And then also the wants and needs of the seller. So these things you should already know and already have talked to the seller about these different things or seen the property and have a better understanding of that. So the main things that you do need to know is what the seller is asking for, their asking price, what market value is. Sometimes they're pretty on par, sometimes they're out of line. Some people still think that their appraisal from last year is still good, which is not. Mortgages, the amounts, and also the terms, especially with all the different mortgages out there changing. Why the seller is selling. And that's a big thing because then you can also determine what the pain is. And sometimes there isn't any pain. I mean, we've bought some properties before where there wasn't a dying pain, but they just wanted to get the property sold and they wanted their price. We can still work with that. So, and then what they are trying to accomplish, because sometimes we'll get some owners who have been in their house for 30 years, have tons of equity, not in a rush to move or anything, but they need some cash flow for the retirement home. And there's a lot of different scenarios that we've come across. So what they're trying to accomplish is the huge thing. So price and terms. So basically, if they want their price, then we would need to get some great terms. So I can give you the price that you want, but it's going to be structured the way I want it to be structured. And we'll go over the details on that. Or some people say, I want to get cash out in 30 days and be done with the property. We can do that as well, but we have to get a great price for it too, especially if we're going to get you cashed out. So it's a balancing act, and we tell our sellers this to make sure that they understand that, well, if you want this, you have to give me this. It's not all about, it's working a win-win together. So the difference between ugly house and pretty house, does anybody know the difference between the two? Guesses? Anybody?
Would be the rehab houses or the ones that need major
repairs. The repairs. So the equations we're going to go over, that's what's going to be the difference, but also the motivation of the seller as well. Usually with an ugly house, they're not really clear as to what the repairs are going to be. And sometimes with our costs, it's actually less than what they think it is. And then pretty house, there may not be as much repairs, but they're not as easily to give you a great price on it because it's a pretty house. Not much needs to be done. So, determining equity. If everybody could go into their book, what I've done is created a little cheat sheet. And so we'll go over this and take it step by step so then you can determine as to, what is the next step to take. So first, we're going to go through determining equity. If you look on the diagram, we talk about the things that you need to know from the seller. And then the next box is determining equity. If we go down, we have the green box where it gives us the equation for the equity. So, which is market value, subtract out 15% closing costs, subtract out the repairs, as well as all the liens on the property, and that'll give you the net equity. So when you're talking to a seller, you'll be able to determine if they have equity or not in 5 minutes. And then if they, to break down the cost of the closing costs, 15% consists of 3% price reduction. And sometimes it's even more than that. And what we've also seen in the market is that because of the financing issues, more sellers are having to contribute more to get the property sold. We've seen anywhere between 3 to 9%, that they contribute to getting their house sold. So whether it's in a form of a down payment or closing costs or what have you. So there's also the 6% commission, the 3% for taxes, title, and escrow, and then also 3% buyer inspection and holding cost. So usually what I tell people is that most agents, they'll go through this 3%, or excuse me, this 6% and this 3%, but they don't take into account really the 3% of price reduction or this 3% of buyer inspection. But it still affects your net equity of what the seller will end up with the property or with their cash out. So we could explain that in the sales process aspect of it. But when you're talking to them on the phone and determining what they have to work with, this is a quick little equation for you. Well, this is just a cursory. So like when somebody comes to me and tells me, I want this for my property, and this is how much I owe, then I could just do a quick little equation to determine if there's enough equity there for me to go out and see them, or for them to tell them, no, we're not really interested. So but we'll go into more detail with that though too, because it will affect the profit. So in your workbook, so we have the equation here, and if you guys can get out your calculators, we'll go through, and if you could fill out the colored portions of it, we have 10 examples that we'll use throughout the day, and then this will give you a good understanding as to how you're doing the numbers. So if you could just take a couple of minutes and figure out the 15% closing costs and what the net equity is,